The burning Arizona sun sank low across the scarred desert, casting long shadows over the cracked earth as Luke Harding, a hardened cowboy with more ghosts than friends, guided his horse along the dusty trail toward the Harding homestead, never suspecting that fate was about to place something precious and someone unforgettable directly in his path, because as he approached a dry ravine where the hot wind carried the smell of dust and distant sage, he spotted a small, trembling shape lying half-hidden behind a rock. And when he slid off his saddle and knelt down, he found a tiny Apache girl, no more than 7, her bare feet raw from running, her cheeks streaked with dirt and dried tears, her dark eyes wide with terror, as if she had escaped a nightmare only to stumble into another. For a moment Luke simply stared, feeling a sharp tug in his chest he had not felt in years, a feeling he recognized instantly, protectiveness, fierce and instinctive, as he whispered, "Easy now, sweetheart. You're safe," though he had no idea what danger she had fled, only that no child should ever be left alone under a sun that could kill a grown man by sundown. The little girl tried to speak, but her dry lips failed her, and so Luke gently lifted her into his arms, shocked at how light she was, how fragile, and he placed her across his saddle before mounting up and riding hard toward the ranch, dust rising behind him like the smoke trail of destiny. Once home, he carried her inside, cleansed her wounds, fed her warm broth, and stayed by her side until her frightened breathing softened into sleep. And when she finally woke hours later, her voice barely a whisper, she said her name, Noya, a name that meant heart, and Luke felt something shift deep inside him, something he had long assumed the world had beaten out of him after years of loss and loneliness. Over the next 2 days, the girl clung to him like a frightened shadow, flinching at sudden noises, waking from nightmares with tears in her eyes. And each time she reached for him, Luke held her steady, promising without words that no harm would touch her again. Yet he could not help but wonder where she had come from, who had hurt her, and what kind of story sat trapped behind those haunting eyes. Until on the 3rd night the answer came, not by words, but by footsteps moving silently through the dark brush surrounding the ranch. Footsteps so light they barely disturbed the sand. Yet Luke sensed the presence before he saw it, the hairs on his neck rising as he stepped outside with his rifle in hand. And there she was, tall, strong, graceful, stepping out from the shadows, with the confidence of someone who belonged to the land itself, an Apache woman with long black hair braided with feathers, sharp cheekbones, a proud stance, and eyes that held both fury and heartbreak as she looked at him, her hand resting on a handmade blade at her hip. And in a voice trembling with both fear and strength, she said, "I have come for my child." And in that instant Luke's world shifted, because she was not only the most striking woman he had ever seen, she was something far more powerful, a living storm wrapped in beauty, courage, and fire. And though Luke's grip on his rifle tightened at first, he found himself lowering it in the same breath, because the fierce devotion in her eyes told him she was not here to attack. She was here to reclaim the piece of her soul that had been torn from her. And before Luke could say a word, Noya appeared in the doorway, her small voice breaking into a sob as she cried, "Ama!" and ran straight into her mother's arms. The woman, whom Luke would soon learn was named Ayana, meaning eternal. Blossom dropped to her knees and wrapped her daughter in an embrace, so desperate, so relieved, that Luke felt something tighten painfully in his chest, watching as Ayana whispered frantic words in Apache, her hands trembling as she checked Noya's face, hair, arms, as if reassuring herself the girl was whole, alive, safe. But then she lifted her head, her eyes meeting Luke's, dark, sharp, assessing him not as a stranger but as a man who had sheltered her child. And though her stance remained guarded, there was gratitude flickering there, thin as a wick but undeniably real. Luke spoke softly, careful not to make a single movement that might appear threatening. She was alone in the desert. I only wanted to help, and Ayana, still breathing hard from fear and relief, finally nodded, whispering, You saved her life, words that carried weight, meaning, and a depth that made Luke's heartbeat stumble. She rose slowly, keeping Noya close. And Luke noticed the exhaustion in her posture, the way her shoulders slumped just slightly, the kind of weariness carved from days of searching and nights of crying into the wind. And though she stood like a warrior, he could see the wounded mother beneath the armor. He offered them food, water, shelter for the night, expecting her to refuse. But after one long moment, Ayana accepted, not for herself, but because Noya leaned into Luke with trust shining in her eyes. A trust Ayana could not ignore. Inside, as she ate cautiously, her sharp gaze scanning every corner of the room, as if danger might spring from the walls, Luke couldn't stop stealing glances at her, struck by every detail of her presence, the strength in her posture, the intelligence in her eyes, the gentle way she rubbed circles on Noya's back, the way her voice softened when speaking to her daughter, even though a fire raged beneath every word. She was a woman who had suffered, survived, fought, and still carried love like a weapon forged from hope. And Luke, who had long believed his heart had turned to dry, brittle dust, felt something awaken, something he did not invite, yet could not resist. Ayana spoke little that night, giving only small pieces of her story. Their village had been attacked, raiders storming through at dawn, the chaos forcing her and Noya to flee in different directions, and she had searched endlessly through the desert, following footprints and prayer until she reached this ranch, guided, she said, by instinct, ancestors, and the faint hope that her daughter still breathed beneath the same sunset. Luke listened with a heaviness in his chest, imagining the terror of a mother losing her child, and he found himself saying softly, "You both can stay here as long as you need," surprising even himself. But Ayana only looked at him with unreadable eyes, as if trying to understand why a cowboy she'd never met would show them kindness in a world that had rarely shown her people the same. Over the next days, the tension faded into an unexpected calm as Ayana slowly allowed herself to trust Luke, not completely, but enough to remain close, speak more freely, and even help with chores around the ranch. And Luke, though he tried to stay composed, felt himself drawn to her like a man wandering, thirsty through the desert finding a rare, life-giving spring, unable to ignore the way her laughter softened the edges of the ranch, the way she moved with grace even when doing simple tasks, the way she looked at the horizon with a depth that made the world feel wider. Noya thrived between them, smiling more each day, her nightmares fading as she held both her mother's hand and Luke's, and the three of them began to form something fragile, unspoken, impossible, yet undeniably real, as if fate had woven their paths together, long before any of them knew it. Yet the more time Luke spent near Ayana, the more he realized he was fighting a losing battle against the growing pull in his chest, because every stolen glance, every quiet conversation by the water pump, every moment their hands brushed while tending the horses sent a shock through him he had no words for. And though Ayana tried to keep her distance, pretending her heart was guarded stone, Luke noticed the small betrayals her body made, the way her eyes lingered on him when she thought he wasn't looking, the way her breath softened when he spoke gently to Noya, the way her shoulders relaxed when he was near, as if she felt safer beside him than she wanted to admit. One evening, as the sun melted into gold behind the mountains, Luke found her standing alone by the corral, her braids swaying in the warm breeze, her expression distant as she watched Noya feed a small pinto horse, and something inside him pushed him forward, carrying him to her side. For a long moment they stood silently, the air thick with unspoken things, until Ayana said in a low voice, "Your land, your home, it gives her peace." And Luke, heart catching at the sound of her soft gratitude, answered, "She deserves all the peace in the world. And so do you," a sentence that made Ayana turn sharply toward him, her eyes widening as if his words had reached a part of her she'd locked away for years. She looked away quickly, speaking almost to herself. "Peace is not meant for people like me." And Luke stepped closer, not touching her, but close enough for her to feel his warmth, saying, "Everyone deserves peace, especially those who fought for it, and Ayana's breath hitched, her resolve weakening for the first time since he'd met her. That night she didn't eat at the far corner of the table as usual. She sat beside Luke, close enough for their arms to brush, close enough that he noticed the citrus and sage scent of her hair, close enough that every breath seemed heavier than the last. And though they never spoke of what simmered between them, both felt it like a steady drumbeat beneath their ribs. Days turned into a week, then two, and the fragile thread connecting them grew stronger until even the ranch hands noticed the way. Luke's gaze softened around her, the way Ayana's fierce eyes brightened when he entered a room, the way Noya instinctively joined their hands when they walked as if she already understood that these two hearts were slowly becoming one. Then came the night everything changed. A storm rolled across the plains, lightning carving jagged scars through the sky, thunder shaking the earth like the voice of an angry god. And the ranch trembled under the fierce desert rain as Luke moved quickly to secure the shutters. Ayana and Noya, frightened by the violence of the storm, stayed close to the fire, and when a sudden blast of wind slammed the door open, causing Noya to scream, Ayana pulled her daughter close, but Luke was there in a heartbeat, his strong arms wrapping around both of them, guiding them away from the flying debris. In that moment, with Noya trembling between them and the storm raging like the world was ending, Ayana looked up into Luke's eyes, really looked, and something inside her broke open. Years of solitude, fear, and loss washing up all at once, and Luke, seeing that crack in her armor, gently touched her cheek, letting his thumb brush away the tears she tried to hide. The world outside roared with chaos, yet inside the room time seemed to stop, the fire painting gold across her skin, the air heavy with the electricity of two hearts leaning toward the same impossible truth. And though neither moved closer, something undeniable passed between them, a silent vow, a promise forged without words, a moment that said, "I see you, I need you, I am yours if you'll have me." When the storm finally calmed and Noya fell asleep, Ayana remained by the fire, her knees drawn close, her eyes reflecting the glow as Luke sat beside her, close enough for their shoulders to touch. And she whispered, "You have given us safety, when the world has only taken from us," her voice trembling with an emotion she could no longer conceal. Luke swallowed hard, answering, "I'd give you both a lifetime of safety if you'd let me." And those words sank so deep into her heart that she could no longer deny the truth. She had been fighting so desperately. The night that followed was one the entire Arizona frontier would remember, for it was the night when every deep truth the West had buried erupted into the open like a wildfire tearing across dry brush. After the raid, after the gunshots and the dust and the cries, the ranch settled into an uneasy stillness. The wounded were tended, the fences repaired, the Apache horses calmed. But inside the hearts of everyone, Samuel, Neola, Little Star, even Red Hawk's remaining warriors, storms, raged loud enough to drown out the coyotes wailing in the distant hills. Samuel couldn't sleep. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw Neola standing between him and death, her voice commanding warriors to stand down, her eyes blazing with something fierce and sorrowful. He sat on the porch in the cold dawn, boots dusty, hat low on his brow, rubbing his hands together as if trying to warm himself from a chill that wasn't on his skin but in his soul. It wasn't long before Neola joined him, wrapped in a blanket, moving quietly like morning wind. Little Star slept inside, clutching a carved wooden horse Samuel made for her, peaceful for the first time in days. "There will be retaliation," Neola whispered, her voice tight, her gaze fixed on the awakening horizon. "My people will think I betrayed them. The men who followed Red Hawk will return, with more fury, more fire." Samuel's jaw tightened. "Then let them come. I'll protect you. I'll protect Little Star. I'm not letting anyone take either of you away." But Neola shook her head, pain cutting sharp across her features. "You do not understand, Samuel. A fight between your ranch and my people will mean death. Blood on the ground. Old grudges reignited. Children losing parents, parents losing children. And it will be because of me." Her voice cracked. The first time he had ever seen it falter. Samuel turned to her, gently tilting her chin so she would meet his eyes. "No, it'll be because the world has been cruel to people who never deserved cruelty. You're not the cause, you're the bridge. Maybe the only bridge." The words broke something inside her. Tears slid down her cheeks, slow and quiet. The kind of tears she had held back for years. She leaned into him, and for a moment, just a moment, the world seemed soft. But dawn did not bring peace. Before the sun had risen fully, a dust cloud rose from the horizon. An armed Apache scouting party. Not hostile, not charging, watching, measuring, waiting. Neola stiffened. "They are deciding if I am worth the war that may follow." Samuel stepped onto the porch rail, standing tall and unflinching. "Then let them see I'm not their enemy." He walked into the open, alone. The warriors watched, tense, bows half drawn. One rode forward, a scarred fighter named Two Knives, known for being ruthless and loyal to Red Hawk's memory. "We have come for the woman," he said in Apache, eyes hard. Neola stepped beside Samuel. "I will speak," she told him firmly, and then she faced her own people. She spoke with the authority of a mother protecting her child, of a leader who had grown tired of burying those she loved. She told them the truth of the raid, of how Samuel saved Little Star, of how she chose peace over vengeance, of how she saw a future where her daughter could walk freely between two worlds without fear. Two Knives spat at the ground. "And the cowboy? He stands beside you like husband. Do you choose him over your people?" The air froze. Samuel's heart pounded. Neola took a long breath, one that trembled but never broke. "I choose the future over the past," she said. "I choose the place where my daughter will not grow up listening to war drums. If it is with him, then yes." "I choose him," the warriors murmured, some angry, some conflicted. Two Knives snarled. "Then you choose exile." Neola bowed her head, not in shame but in acceptance. "If that is the price for peace, I pay it willingly." And then something happened that no one expected. Little Star burst out of the house, ran barefoot across the yard, and wrapped her arms around both her mother and Samuel, crying, "No take Mama! No hurt my family!" The small voice pierced deeper than any arrow. Several warriors softened immediately. Even Two Knives flinched. For the first time they saw not betrayal, but a family forged from survival, from kindness, from choices made not in hatred but in hope. Two Knives hesitated, then lifted his spear high. Every warrior waited for the signal that would decide everything. Finally he lowered it and said, "We will not take her, but we will not protect her. She walks her own path now." It was not forgiveness, but it was peace. The warriors rode off toward the mountains, leaving the ranch in stunned silence. Neola collapsed to her knees, shaking. Samuel lifted her into his arms. "You're safe," he whispered. "You're home." And for the first time in her life, Neola believed it. As the day warmed, as Little Star laughed again, as the ranch workers gathered around with relief in their eyes, Samuel realized something powerful. This wasn't the end of their story. It was the beginning. A new chapter where love, courage, and unity would overcome everything the frontier could throw at them. And he knew deep in his heart that the West would remember this tale. The cowboy, the Apache woman, and the little girl who brought two worlds together. And dear viewers, if you want to see more powerful, emotional Wild West stories that touch the heart and shake the soul, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and stay tuned, because more unforgettable tales are coming your way. And so the days rolled forward like gentle waves across the prairie, each sunrise softer than the last, each nightfall warmer than the one before, until life in Red Valley settled into a rhythm that felt more like destiny than chance. Luke, Ayana, and little Nyland became a sight folks talked about with quiet admiration, a family stitched together, not by blood, but by courage, kindness, and the strange miracles the Wild West liked to drop on unsuspecting souls. Word spread from settlement to settlement about the cowboy who took in an Apache girl and ended up finding the two loves he never knew he was missing. Wanderers stopped by to shake Luke's hand. Tribal families visited with gifts and blessings. and neighbors finally understood why the valley felt safer than it ever had. On the morning of their small wedding, the cliffs echoed with a chorus of tribal drums and country fiddles blending into a single wild, beautiful harmony that only a place like the frontier could create. Ayana wore a traditional beaded dress that shimmered like sunlight on water, while Luke, standing tall and steady, looked at her as if the world had finally given him the one thing it owed him all along. When they spoke their vows, simple and honest, the valley seemed to breathe with them, sealing their promises in the wind. Bolin, standing proudly between them, clutched both their hands as if anchoring the universe in place. By nightfall, the celebration roared, fires glowing, dancers spinning, children running between lanterns that swayed in the warm breeze, and the new family at the heart of it all, smiling at each other with a quiet certainty. The battles were behind them. The scars had healed, and the future stretched wide and bright like an open plain. And as the stars climbed high above their cabin, Luke stepped forward, tipping his hat with that easy cowboy grin, and spoke the final words that carried through the campfire, smoke like a promise to every listener watching from afar. If you've been riding with us through this whole story, partner, hit that subscribe button and stay close. There are 1,000 more tales out here in the Wild West, and I'd be mighty proud to tell every single one. Don't miss the next ride.